Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Pax Americana. I'm Julie Roginski here with Olga Lautman. We have a lot to get through because I feel, Olga, like this week, it's only Thursday, but for some reason, this week has just had so many different insanity outrages that it feels like the 17th day of the same week. I don't know how you feel about this, but between Harvard, which we'll get to in a moment, the just the outright defiance of court orders with Abrego Garcia in El Salvador, so much espionage, which we'll get to in a second, going on by the Russians in the North Sea off the coast of England, and whistleblowers who are telling us exactly what Elon Musk is up to. Just insanity. And before we get to all of that, I want to say, because our show is so focused on um, parallels between what happens here and what has already happened in places like Russia. There is a breaking story right now, just as we logged on today, where Lisa Murkowski, the Republican senator from Alaska, I don't know if you saw this, gave a
No.
speech. It's pretty. I'm actually doing a Substack newsletter on it later. But gave a speech in Alaska, and typically speeches in Alaska don't get covered much, but at least by not by national media. But this one sort of has, and it really should, and people should talk about this, where she basically said that she was scared of retribution, or that she was scared of, you know, just what would happen to people who protest this administration. And this is not some random person sitting in Alaska who's blogging about their distaste for Donald Trump. This is a United States senator, a member of a co equal branch of government, a member of the Republican Party, whose father was also a member of the Republican Party, whose father was the governor of Alaska and the senator from Alaska. She has been a senator for over 20 years, and she's scared. And I just want people to before we don't dwell on it, but for those of you who just heard me, I want that to just sink in for a moment. Because if somebody of Lisa Murkowski's stature, who belongs to the same Republican Party as this president, is scared of him, what does that mean about American democracy and where we are? How many days, Olga? 82 days into this administration? You keep track.
And we are now on 89,
89 days. We are less than 3 months.
100 days, 3
Yeah,
months. Yep.
3 months. And that's what it's taken for a member of a co equal branch of government to feel terrified for her own safety. And I presume for the safety of everybody around her. So,
Every day, it
yeah,
feels more and more like Russia. Every
yeah,
single day. The
yeah,
tactics, and it's happening so quick because when Putin seized power, even though the system is corrupt and the system, I mean, again, we've discussed this many times, it goes from the Tsars to the communist, to now Putin's party. Even though the system is corrupt, it's a security state. And basically I call it a Chaka state because it's the security services who, for the past century, have run the state.
yeah,
Um, it's still, Putin didn't exhibit this insanity. I mean, it took him time to get to the point where in Russia you can't even like a post without being arrested. And the fact, that she came out public, we have seen so many private reports of, Congress people afraid to speak out. Granted, yes, they love power. They don't want Elon Musk to, pay for a primary challenge to them. But there have been so many reports where they say we are scared for our lives. We are getting death threats. We have had to, temporarily leave our home. And this is not how you run a government. A government, I mean, this is how it's run in Russia, where if you, you know, actually say something out of the ordinary, you'll either, be arrested on public TV, which I've watched so many scenes of this where, someone is giving a speech or holding a meeting, and then FSB comes, throws a bag over their head, and drags them out because they love to send public messages. Um, or you get thrown out a window, or you just get, charges against you from 1990s, fabricated charges with a
Yep.
corrupt captured court system and an interior ministry, and frankly the whole system that will make sure that you end up in jail. um and this is not how you run a government, and this is what Trump did during the first term. But again, during the first term there were guardrails. He didn't fully have the Republican Party captured, whereas now there are no guardrails. And I mean, I really will get to the whistleblower story, but that really sent chills down my spine because I'm like, my God, we're short of someone being thrown out a window.
Yeah.
And it is going to be coming here. And this just is another reminder of that. I mean, but the last point I'll make is that the best way to fight these type of regimes is through collective action. And Lisa Murkowski needs to have a band, and of senators and other congress people and politicians, and they need to push back together forcefully. That way you don't feel like you're just a one person who's a target. It's like basically you come for me, you're coming for all of us. And this is the way to push back against these regimes.
Well, Lisa Murkowski, if I were in her shoes, I mean, she ran as an independent when the Republicans threw her. Basically, she lost Republican Party support. She ran as an independent, although she's a Republican. Senator Murkowski, with all due respect, it may be time to leave the Republican Party and caucus with the Democrats. Maybe you don't agree with Democrats on a lot of issues. Maybe you don't agree with Democrats on fiscal policy or even social policy. Although I think with social
We're
policy,
so far away from
well, we're
that.
so far away from that. It's what I've said consistently about Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. It's not about whether you like the Green New Deal or whether you want Medicare for all anymore. They're the only ones who are actually doing what needs to be done. Both the
Don't you?
leaders coming up.
You're a political person. This
Yeah,
is your
yeah,
life's work. Don't you miss the days where you turned C-SPAN on and it was like over a decade ago, like 2 decades ago? I would turn it on for a second. Literally, you fall asleep from like the quiet, debates
yeah,
of, what kind of policy we should have. This is pre-Trump. And I'm like, my God, our politics used to be normal. I mean, it used to be so normal that it was boring. No wonder none of us were tapped into it because you
yeah,
could fall asleep listening
yeah.
to a
Listen,
Senate debate.
I remember being involved in the Gore campaign in 2000. I mean, that's how old I am. And the big issue was, whether you put Social Security into a, Senate Lat kind of made a joke about it, but whether you put Social Security into a lockbox, whether you needed a new Star Wars program, which was what Bush was pushing about the Bush tax cuts, those were the issues that we would debate as Democrats and Republicans. And by the way, as a Democrat, I believe very strongly we need to have a strong Republican Party.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We need a strong two-party system. This is not it. We don't have a two-party
No,
system anymore. We
no.
have a dictatorship. And what you and I talk about all the time, and this is the part that drives me insane about our media, is that they will write these stories in isolation. They will write the
Yes.
Murkowski. I have no doubt that eventually the New York Times or whoever will get to this Murkowski story probably in the next several hours if they haven't already that I'm talking about right now. But it's the connecting of the dots and it's the patterns that they have a very hard time writing about. You and
Yep.
I have seen these patterns because we've studied these patterns because we come from a place that has paved the way for
Uses
these
these.
patterns. We
Yep.
know how this playbook is played. And I will say what I have consistently said, and I will repeat it again to anybody who's a Trump supporter who might be watching this, my friends, they will come for you eventually because every dictator does. Every single one. You go back to the French Revolution, you get to this terror of 1793. I don't want to give a history lesson, but it wasn't, they started with the nobility and then they turned on each other. You get to the Soviets, the Bolsheviks, Stalin turned on all of his former supporters. You get to Hitler, the Knight of the Long Knives. You get to all of the SA support, all the people who helped bring him to power, he eventually killed. And so on and so forth. So if the Steve Bannons of the world and the Elon Musks of the world are sitting there thinking that this is all about making the libs cry harder, uh, they're going to be on the chopping block along with the rest of us. You have a United States senator. I'm sorry, but I apologize for my language, but a fucking United States senator who is terrified of a man who, on paper, should have no more power than the body in which he serves. It is a co equal branch of government, it is in our Constitution.
Technically he shouldn't be in power. And just to give an example
Yeah,
about not connecting the dots, I one of my expertise is the Russian mafia and the geopolitical implications of it, and how it was used as an arm of intelligence, and how during the Jackson-Vanik amendment when we came here,
yeah,
that Russia saw this as an opportunity at the time, the KGB, to move their criminals and agents through this amendment to get them onto U.S. soil and Israeli soil, which then many of them were activated. Um, and I grew up on Brighton Beach, and I mean, this was like basically the 70s, 80s was all mafia. I mean, it
right.
was mafia, and everyone controlled every single cafe, all the glitzy cafes. You're listening to music upstairs, downstairs, they're probably torturing someone to death. There were killings, people were being hung in front of cafes because of the rifts between the different Russian mafia people, assassinations. I mean, it was a very interesting place to grow up in, besides all the scams. But the point of that was that a lot of these things, they were also infiltrating here and learning the loopholes. And I've spoken to former FBI agents and former prosecutors from the time, and they treated this as independent incidents and treated it as the Italian mafia, because the
Yeah.
Italian mafia basically, they carried out all this corruption, but it was more to make money. Whereas the Russian mafia carried out this corruption, and they moved this information to the KGB, because Brighton Beach was crawling with KGB agents. And they moved it back to intelligence services, which then can be used at a time of their choosing, or at least to kind of fill in the profiles of, how the United States
Yeah.
works. And the FBI at the time really treated this as individual incidents. They did not realize the geopolitical implications, even in the 80s, even as these people were, the main mob boss on Brighton Beach. One of them was, bragging how he grew up with Gorbachev, which he did, in his town. Another one I remember had a video store. His name was Tarzan. He had a video store on the corner. He ended up going to Florida, and because they all migrated to Pennsylvania, Florida, to to expand their schemes.
Right.
He was selling Soviet like nuclear submarines, like, and trafficking drugs, by the way, connected to St. Petersburg. So it wasn't just local mafia dealings. And this is the problem. Had they connected these dots, I mean, Trump was all in this. I mean, one of the main mobsters on Brighton Beach, uh, at the time, was bragging that he was hiding his mistress in Trump Tower, and at the same time buying Giuliani, and sending money to his campaign. Ended up getting a position on the Economic Business Council in New York City. But the bottom line is that, this is the failure with Americans. They don't connect the dots. They don't see the bigger picture, and they don't use the mentality. They don't understand what really is going on, and this is a huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do need to understand the Russian slash Soviet mentality to understand. First of all, it's a very long game. Um, Second, they don't need to worry about elections. So they have the ability to really play long term. Um,
And sorry to cut in. Same
yeah,
thing with China.
same thing with China.
Right now
Exactly right.
everyone is chewing over, well, China calls G. Can they sustain this and this and that? I mean, I don't know the Chinese system, but I do know that they run it like the Russian system. And I
Yeah,
can tell you that they will eat cockroaches before basically giving into the United States. And
No, the
actually,
China.
my mom told me that the cockroaches is a delicatessen there. Um, but it's the point that it's a different mentality. Like in
Yes.
Russia, in China, they're meant to suffer because for them, they're fighting something way bigger than what we are. I mean, they have like an ideology that goes back hundreds of years, and one of this is you cannot, you know, like give in to the West, you know?
Yes, and they don't respect us. That's the thing that I think the United States, because we get so jingoistic ourselves, and because we think that we are, this exceptional nation, which we have been, no longer, I think, or maybe we're exceptional for different reasons now, not in a good way. But, again, I don't know as much about the Chinese as I do about Russia, but I'll start with Russia and then I'll move on to what I think I've read about the Chinese, which is the Russians feel like they have had, 1,000-year culture. It is the land of Tchaikovsky, it's the land of Tolstoy, it's the land of Dostoevsky, it's the land of Mendeleev. They take that very seriously. And I remember back in the 80s during the Soviet days, there was one of the early exchanges. I believe I'm trying to remember this correctly. The Bolshoi ballet came to the United States, and the Beach Boys went to Russia, and the Russians were deeply offended. They're like, "We're giving you the Bolshoi, you're giving us the Beach Boys now." The Beach Boys are one of the great bands of all time, but they just, uh, there's no respect here. The Chinese are the same. The Chinese, 5,000 years or however many years, as the Chinese government, the CCP tweeted out about us, um, uh, X number of thousands of years of our culture, and you think we're going to cave to you, who've been around for 249 years? Like, I don't think so. And
And
so
they
I
don't
think,
have elections.
and
They
they don't have
don't have
elections, so they don't have to
elections.
worry
They don't
about it.
have to answer to
Yeah.
their people. So if Chinese, the economy collapses, and anyone comes out to protest, they'll have tanks run them over. I
Yeah.
mean, they don't need to answer to the people. This is where this dictatorship is.
And that's what I think Trump is trying to get to here as well. Because pretty
Yep.
soon, any protest, there will be tanks coming out because now he's got Pete Hegseth in the Pentagon who will have no problem furling the tanks or whatever else it takes,
And that's
nationalizing.
what he wanted to do the first term. I mean,
Correct.
it took Milley, to tell him, no, Mr. President, we cannot shoot protesters and use our army to shoot protesters during Black Lives Matter
Yeah,
protest. I mean,
exactly. Exactly. All right, let's move on to Harvard because I think Harvard um, is an interesting case of standing up to what's happening right now. But Harvard is also Harvard. It has the luxury of doing that. So, what are your thoughts about what's happened at Harvard this week?
well, I am looking, of course, from the authoritarian glance, and I have to say, everything I've seen, with Trump attacking universities, is a very authoritarian thing because the first thing a dictator wants to do is seize control of universities because this is usually historically, I don't know what happened to American students, but historically and prior in America too, just not now. But
Yeah.
historically, every major movement, revolution has started from universities. And usually, when dictators take power, they want to have full control of universities, short term to quash any, dissent and prevent any kind of movements from growing. And in the long term, to turn it into kind of what is it called, incubation like tubes
Yeah.
to push the state agenda and to indoctrinate people. So, I mean, clearly, indoctrination takes, years, and it's very hard to do these days with social media and just so much information out there. But in the short term, to take control of universities, is a must for a dictator. And what Trump is doing, two things that really worry me. One, that he has gone after. And it's not just Harvard. I mean, Harvard is the one pushing back. It's Columbia. It's, I think, I believe, you know, dozens of
All of
universities
them. Yeah. And
have.
not just, and not just the Ivies,
Yeah,
Northwestern. I mean, a lot of,
everywhere.
yeah.
But what is even more scary and gives us, a very clear window of what's going to happen to all of us is how Trump is weaponizing the agencies, independent agencies like Department of Homeland Security, like IRS, like Department of Justice,
Yeah.
to go after Harvard. And they're using the tools of the government to basically try to force a university to kneel to a dictator. And these are such authoritarian tactics. I mean, like I said, in Russia, if you say the wrong thing, the next thing they're gonna, oh, you failed to pay this. Oh, you have, this criminal offense from decades ago. I mean, they will revive, they will fabricate things using the agencies as tools to suppress dissent. And the fact that he's doing this with Harvard, I mean, last night, as I was putting the tracker together, it broke that not only is he using the IRS to strip, their nonprofit status, but he's using Department of Homeland Security to see how he can prevent foreign students from being allowed to go to Harvard. And I mean, like I said, once we start getting into weaponizing agencies, this can be anyone. It could be, IRS agent showing up to your door or my door and saying, "Oh,
Sure.
you remember that 2009 thing that we see a discrepancy here, so we're, opening a criminal investigation," or anything, period. And this is why it's dangerous once we start crossing this path, because this is pure dictator tactics. There's nothing else about it. This is dictatorship in motion.
It is. And by the way, it is just plainly against the law. There was a law passed in the 1970s to use the IRS to go after your political enemies because Richard Nixon did, and Congress passed a law to prevent that from happening. So uh, he's just violating the law. I mean, to be clear, this is not something that is like gray, it's not nebulous. This is a fact. I mean, there is a
Yeah.
law that says you cannot direct the IRS to go after individuals. You cannot do that. And if you get audited, it has to be because some random audit popped up about a random person. It's not that somebody's going to wake up and say, "Oh, I want to, I'm going to edit Olga Lautman, God forbid, today, because I don't like what she says." And
Yep.
yet, that is exactly what he's doing with Harvard. I suspect that's what he's going to do with the rest
And
of
he
us.
did this during the first term again
Yes.
with Michael Cohen. I
Yep.
mean, so, this is again, except then there were guardrails. Now
Yep.
he has yes men surrounding him.
And look, Harvard has a massive endowment. It is the richest university in the country, if not the world. Um, Harvard has tremendous resources, but the federal government has more. Now, the $2 billion that they're stripping from Harvard, Harvard can absorb that. Most of that money, by the way, goes to healthcare, to things like cancer research and Alzheimer's research. Um, so, like the Dana Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, that's going to be impacted. Um, so understand what he's doing. He's not punishing Harvard. He's punishing all of us who would like a cure for Alzheimer's or cancer or any other things that we're all worried about, including Donald Trump, whose father died of Alzheimer's, and his sister too, I believe. But so that's one. But two, it's the IRS thing that's more terrifying to me than him stripping the federal funding. It's preventing foreign students from coming here because let's be very clear, foreign students who come here are a net benefit to us.
Yes.
And they don't have to come here. There are plenty of good universities all over the world. I am sure Cambridge and Harvard, Cambridge and Oxford, in just in the English speaking world, um, University of Toronto, all of these places would be thrilled to have these foreign students and these foreign researchers. Like, I don't know if you read this New York Times profile of Ksenia Petrova, who's the woman who, the Harvard researcher, Russian researcher, who was stopped on her way back from France,
Hmm.
um, and arrested and was going to be sent back to France until she said, "I'm afraid of being sent back to Russia because I worry I'm going to get arrested by Putin because I protested the war in Ukraine." And now she's sitting there cooling her heels in Louisiana, in limbo, in hell. The stuff that she was working on was groundbreaking. It was going to, if she was successful, going to impact all of our lives because it was truly medicine for the public good. It was research for the public good that was going to eventually address things like Alzheimer's, like memory loss, other diseases. Do you think somebody like that is going to want to come here?
No.
Why would they come here? And by the way, that medicine, that research, then is used by drug companies to develop drugs. The American pharmaceutical industry is going to be impacted by this. I mean, this is truly the wholesale destruction of the United States. I don't know how to say. I mean, there's a reason why people clamor to come to Harvard, and it's not because they wanted a degree that said Veritas on it. I mean, maybe that too, but but the best research facilities, precisely because the government wasn't interfering, precisely because you didn't have to do kickbacks to whoever to allow you to do that. No more. No
And
more.
precisely because the government, wanted America to lead in this innovation of
Of
developing
course.
medicines and, cures, and scientific studies, and we're supporting this. I mean, this is something they wanted. And I mean, with this, you see Trump is doing this frankly with everything. I mean, this of health and whatever RFK's
Yeah.
agency, I mean, is being gutted. I mean, and this is affecting, again, Republican states. I saw that there's a congressman, I believe his name is Moore, and he has an Alzheimer's center, that he was proud, built after his name, and proud to, like, open, and it got cut with funding, and it was also working on research. So I mean, he's chasing away all the talent, all the scientists, everything, in just a wholesale destruction of science.
And
It's
let me just,
it's
yeah, and let me just make one parallel before we move on. There's a reason that the Russians don't invent things anymore. Now, when during our time and even before our time, Russia had an incredible science, Soviet Union, and even before the Soviet Union had an incredible scientific program. I mean, first people in space, um, certainly, you know, stole the hydrogen bomb from us, but nevertheless were able to design a nuclear weapon. Andrei Sakharov, who was a huge dissident, but one of the most brilliant scientists, if not the most, up there with Einstein, of the 20th century. Um, they truly had an incredible, incredible science program. And since the fall of the Soviet Union, they haven't really done anything. And the reason for that is
yeah,
because they had a brain drain. Scientists left and they went to Western labs where they could actually do their work without government interference. Probably got paid more here too, but I think it's not so much about the money as it was about freedom to actually
yes,
do their work. We're going to have a brain drain here because the best minds are not going to come here. And frankly, you already have people like Tim Snyder and people like Jason Stanley of Yale, both of whom are social scientists who have now gone to Canada. They're now teaching at the University of Toronto. I've known Jason Stanley for probably 30 years. And he was, a professor at Yale who studied fascism. He just a brilliant mind in the philosophy field. He's now living in Canada. We're losing people like that from
and
Yale
France
University.
and
That is a loss to
Germany.
Yale. That is it's Germany. It is a why did Einstein leave Germany? Why was Einstein, I
Yeah,
grew up in Princeton, in New Jersey. Why was he the institute at Princeton and not in Germany? Because he couldn't live freely in Germany to do his work. Plus he
yeah.
was Jewish for obvious reasons. But he couldn't stay in Switzerland, he couldn't stay in Germany. He went to Princeton. That was a huge loss for Germany and a huge gain for Princeton and a huge gain for the United States because ultimately, it helped the it helped the United States.
Absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
you think about these German rocket scientists, all of half of whom, if not all of whom, were Nazis after World War II. They were brought here and they helped develop NASA. And the reason that we sent people to space is because of them. No more. These people are not going to be here anymore.
No, and all the funding is pulled. The luckily, I mean, this regime is so evil that they're not only shutting down these agencies, they're deleting all the data. I mean, so decades of research. Luckily, people are, attempting and working day and night to save the data because, you can always open a lab somewhere else
Yeah.
overseas, but the data and, your findings, I mean, this is decades of work. But to end this part on a good note, because, I always try to find some optimism somewhere. Um, the Guardian reported, and actually it's in local news, but the Guardian kind of is the one that picked up on it to kind of make it more into international news. The big universities are basically developing a NATO pact.
Yes,
And
the Big Ten. Yeah.
it is absolutely amazing. And this is how you go about this because they basically, want to form like a pact where if Trump goes after one of them, he's going after all of them. They will all work to lobby and to get the attention and for provide the lawyers and consult with each other and do everything to push back. This is the way you do it. I mean, the fact that we have universities basically forming a NATO pact in the United States is something I did not think we were going to be discussing, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I did not think we were going to be discussing today, but this is a good thing because this is how you push back. Because,
Yep.
if Trump bullied Colombia and they decide, okay, Mr. President, we will do everything. We are here. Just come in and install your loyalist into our departments and, and teach whatever you want. I mean, this every single time with dictators, you give an inch, they'll take a mile. So you have to push back. You can't even give them a centimeter.
Well, and
Um,
you saw that happening with the law firms, right? The law firms who caved to Trump, who thought that they were going to just, oh, he's going to make us defend whatever. Now he's telling them exactly what he wants them to do, and they're
absolutely.
shocked. They're shocked that Donald Trump is making them do the thing that
Yeah.
what like
Wait
these.
till he makes them go and and
What did
fight
you think?
cases
What did you think was going
against
to happen?
Adam Schiff or
What?
any
Yeah.
other.
Oh yeah. What did you think was going to happen, Paul Weiss? What did you think was going to happen, Skadden I mean, all of these firms, and they're so predatory with each other that they could not have come up with a NATO strategy, but they should have.
Yeah.
They should
And the
have. The
rest
same way.
should. And the rest right now have the ability to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And so learn from the law firms because the law firms failed miserably, and because they obviously thought that if their clients were going to leave them, they would go to their competitors. They had to cut the deal first. Should have approached each other. I mean, they were all too scared, but Harvard is hopefully leading the way. And it's important that it's Harvard because it is the most endowed of the universities, the oldest, the richest. And, if Harvard can do it, so can Columbia, which was not covering itself in glory the last, I would say, 18 months, but certainly not the last few months. Princeton has said, Christopher Einsgruber, the president of Princeton, has said that he'll join Harvard. I mean, all of these universities, plus the Big Ten, the state schools, which is good because they're using an
And this
academic
is
conference to further democracy, which is great.
and that's why I will continue reiterating that with a dictator, I don't care how minor something seems, you cannot overlook it and say, well, this is minor and it's really not affecting me, and not speak out. Because once they start breaking through norms, it snowballs so quick that whereas, it's a disappearance of an immigrant, and you're like, well, he's an illegal immigrant, and it really doesn't affect me too. Suddenly your phone calls are being monitored and you're being disappeared or harassed because you happen to say something critical about the
Yep.
regime. And that's why I will keep repeating, you do not give an inch. And it's the same, like dictators have a perfect Russian mentality. You sit down to negotiate, you even give them a drop, and they'll be like, oh, okay, but we want all of this. And if they don't, then they start escalating. And this
And
is
it's
why it's so important, however minor it is, push back. Every single thing, pushing back is basically how Ukrainians, when Russian tanks, this is how I envision it, when Russian tanks were heading to Kiev, at the start of the full-scale invasion, you had regular civilians putting like these roadblocks that pop the tires of tanks into the roads and kind of booby traps all around, to slow it down. And this is basically what we need to do. Every single action, push back. And I don't care how minor, and I don't agree with, Democrats. We can't focus on everything. And I frankly don't think it's the Democratic Party. This has to come from the people. The people have to unite and push back against everything.
and I don't know if you saw another piece of good news. If you saw Chuck Grassley had a town hall meeting in Iowa, and these were not, sorry, Republicans. These are not paid George Soros protesters. I keep joking. I've been in Democratic politics for 30 years. I have yet to be paid by George Soros to do anything, so I don't know who he's
I'm
paying.
still waiting.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my check, but these are not paid George Soros protesters. These were not paid protesters at all. These looked like really pretty regular Iowa people who were coming to him. And what warmed my heart is they were upset about Abrego Garcia, who has nothing to do with them and directly, except that they understood that he does. They understood that if he doesn't get released, the rule of law has collapsed. And if the rule of law has collapsed, it's only a matter of time until he comes from some farmer in Iowa. So I thought that was interesting that they were actually not yelling at him about the tariffs that Trump is putting on and the reciprocal tariffs that will basically impact all the farmers in Iowa. Their economics are going to be screwed unless Trump can bails them out again, as he did last time he did the tariffs. But they were not upset about that, from what I could see from these shots, as they were about Abrego Garcia. So again, these are regular people. So people are waking up. And Iowa voted for Trump. These are not necessarily progressive Democratic
70%,
voters.
I believe.
Yeah, and it's not so long ago that Iowa was a swing state. It's not so long ago that Iowa, like Florida, had Democratic senators, and that Democrats won the state in the Electoral College. So, there is a point in which I believe it's going to break. The question is, does it break quickly enough or not? And time is running short. So if you are listening to this, I'm not going to tell you what to do and how to do it, but please do something. Whether it is writing a letter or calling your member of Congress or your senator, whether it's attending a rally, whether it is calling your friends who may not be politically active and just letting them know what's happening, whether it is going to a neighborhood party. I mean, I don't know, you know your life better than I know your life, but do something. Do something. Right? Olga and I do something every day. We bring attention to this both on Substack and our writing and also doing the show and other shows that we do. Um, that's because we have the capacity to do what we can do. Some people have the capacity to do more, some people have the capacity to do less, but everybody has the capacity to do something. And that's my public service announcement for today. And the only reason
Yes.
I'm saying it is because we have a very, very, very short, limited period of time. And to people who don't live in the United States, who are listening to us or watching us in Canada or Europe or Asia or Australia or South America, please understand that we are doing our very best to make sure that the United States that you have always looked to as an indispensable nation becomes that again. We are fully in recognition of the fact that we are not right now, that we have let ourselves down and we have certainly let you down. And we are very much hoping that this too shall pass. It's just a question of how much damage is done to all of us and to you before that happens, but it will happen. It will pass. So Lisa,
Yes,
all
and
of that.
April,
That is my
someone mentioned,
yeah.
sorry, April 19 marches. Yes, there's a huge,
Yes.
again, 50-51 march, 50 states, and they've been doing a great thing of organizing these marches, and it's coming up this weekend. So,
Please do it. And I know that it's the holidays for a lot of people, whether it's Passover or certainly Holy Week and Good Friday's tomorrow and Easter is on Sunday. People are with family. I get it. If you have the capacity to go to one of these marches, take your family or just tell them you'll be back in an hour or two and just go. Just go. Because it's important for them to see, and it's not just important for people in Washington to see the power and the commitment of the American people. It's important for our allies or our former allies, I guess our allies now
yes,
are North Korea and Russia, but our historic allies to see
El
that this is
Salvador.
yeah, that this is not El Salvador, right? Um, that this is not the American people. It's him. And yes, we elected him, and yes, he won the popular vote. Uh, I can't explain it, but no more. He does not have the support of the American people or the majority of the American people. He has the support of a bunch of dead ender manosphere weirdos who we used to always joke Twitter is not real life. It has become real life,
Yes,
right? Those trolls you see on Twitter are now running our government. And
and
most of us don't subscribe to that.
use this time with family if you can attend the protest. Discuss something that your family cares about, whether it's science, whether it's education,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Use this time to tell them of what is happening, because I mean, the one thing we are lucky is that Trump is moving like a bulldozer through the US. I mean, he could have done this very quietly. He could have, worked behind the scenes to disrupt everything, and we would have a lot would have gone under our radar. The fact is, he is blanketing red districts, blue districts with so much chaos, with so much hardships. I mean, between stripping Head Start, money for Head Start, and having preschools closed. I mean, I don't care if you're a Republican, Independent, or a Democrat. You have kids, and many people in all parties do not have the money to pay for a preschool. And this will disrupt your work, because I remember when my son was young, there was nothing more stressful if I couldn't find someone to watch him, and that disrupted me going to work, and
Yeah.
it caused problems. And I mean, this is something that affects everyone, and same thing with science, with medicine. I don't know any household in America, sadly, that doesn't have either heart disease or cancer or something. That's all gone. Say goodbye to it. Um, you
Say goodbye
know,
to your right to vote, by the way, because whether you're aware or not, the House passed something called the SAVE Act,
yep,
which means that if you have a different last name than the one you were born with, translation, if you're a married woman or a divorced woman who at some point took your former husband's name, which a lot of women do. I did not, but a lot of women
neither.
did. Yeah, but a lot of women did, and you will not be able to vote until you can, unless you can produce your birth certificate or some other evidence of your maiden name and then your marriage certificate to prove that you're the same person. You are going to be so disenfranchised that I cannot begin to tell you. They're going to make it impossible for women to vote because they know that women tend to vote more Democratic than Republican. That has already passed the House of Representatives. If that passes the Senate, and it can with a simple majority, and I know that everybody's counting on the filibuster, but they can get rid of the filibuster like that tomorrow if they wanted to. Done. It's called the nuclear option. They will exercise it, I guarantee you, before this term is out. And if they pass it in the Senate, Trump will sign it. You will not be able to vote unless you can produce your birth certificate and your marriage certificate and maybe your divorce certificate if you're divorced. It is going to be a nightmare. You will not be able to vote. Please tell the women in your life and the men who love them that this is happening if they're not aware. That's what you're protesting. Your fundamental right to be enfranchised. It is in the Constitution. They're trying to go around that amendment.
And while we're at it, if you have family members who do not have ID, even if the situation is extremely bad financially, try to help them get ID. Even if you have to, take a few months to save up for an ID card, try to help them get ID, because with the Save Act, everyone is going to need to have ID. I mean, it is definitely putting a lot of hurdles to try to, make people disenfranchise them from voting. Um, but it's something we have time, and we, can, if you want to make a donation to someone who doesn't have ID and they can't afford to go get ID, or they don't have the means to go to a DMV, take that time to help your neighbor, your family member, take them, help them get this ID. So everyone does have ID. So when voting comes, we're not going to have, these issues. So that's another thing.
Yeah,
Find
great, great,
find a
great.
voting what is it? Be a sponsor to someone who can vote and who doesn't have the means to.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to this whistleblower, Olga, because this is like
This is
incredible.
so the what is it?
Tell the people what you've discovered.
So this is NPR reported this, and the whistleblower came out and gave an interview on CNN the other day, and I believe Maddo. Um, he worked for the, what is it again? National Relations Labor Board.
And
I always,
NLRB, the National
yeah,
Labor
Labor
Relations
Relations. Okay, I
Board.
always.
Yeah.
So he worked there, and basically what he saw was Elon Musk's operatives going into the system, stealing data, copying data, hiding their tracks by deleting the logs. I mean, the story I suggest, and I'm going to put it into the show notes, I suggest everybody read the story. So, one, he witnessed, these hackers that are attached to Elon Musk stealing all this data. So he witnessed them trying to cover up the data. Then the third thing is that once these people, created their accounts and then deleted the accounts, whatever, there were successful login attempts. The reason they didn't fully log in is because, thank God, the government agencies don't allow anyone from overseas to fully connect to our systems from Russia. So they had these Doge accounts, newly created accounts, and were able to log in. And there were multiple logins coming from Russia. Again, it could have been spoofed, but this is just a little too bizarre. So this happened with the Russia angle, and this is where it feels like Russia. So this whistleblower sees this, is compiling all this data. Um, and then reports it and says, we need to investigate what is happening. He's like, from my assumption, this is what I'm seeing, and I've ruled out, A, B, C, and D, and whatnot. The minute that he went to, call for an investigation privately within his own circle. So again, this is connected to Musk, and someone knew from Musk, one of Musk's hackers. Um, he suddenly receives a threatening note on his door, basically telling him to stop talking about it and just forget what he saw and what he knows, with a picture of him walking the door taken from the dog, not the door, the dog, taken from a drone. So can you imagine now that you have Elon Musk and God knows what other agencies using drones to take pictures and intimidate? I mean, really, in Russia they don't go that far. I mean, they do though.
Yeah.
They start with warnings. They've sent, severed pigs' heads to people's doors, or I remember to a journalist who broke a story, they sent a cathedral from Salisbury, from London, where the Skripal with the Novichok,
Yeah.
they sent a chocolate, cathedral in front to the
Yeah.
newsroom to warn them, like, back up. I mean, but this is insane. In the United States of America, in Washington, D.C., you have a whistleblower who basically is being threatened. And I mean, out of everything, this is what bothers me the most, that he sees something, and we are all taught, if we see something, say something.
Yeah.
He sees something, he collects the evidence, he goes to report this evidence through the proper channels, and then he is left with a note and pictures of him walking his dog, taken from a drone. And who was controlling this drone? Who authorized this drone? There are so many questions, and these intimidation tactics are exactly what happens in Russia. I mean, this is exactly, again, dictator territory.
So to me, this should be the biggest story on the front page of every single mainstream newspaper, leading every single newscast on every single network.
Yes.
I'm gonna excuse Fox from this because they of course never will, but everybody else. Now, I will tell you that this story came out 2 days ago.
Hmm.
Yes. Um, since that time, I did an hour of CNN, I did MSNBC, I did ABC. I'm about to go do MSNBC again once you and I are done here. Not once was this a topic of discussion. Not once. And this is the kind of stuff that we need to demand from our media. And I'm not suggesting that I am a showrunner. I'm not suggesting that I am a producer, but this has been covered by NPR and by Maddow, who did a good job on it. And that's it. That is it. And
Yep.
I don't know why, because it's not like NPR and NBC News, where Maddow works, or MSNBC, are not reputable. This is not the National Enquirer. This has been dead to rights. The guy has come forward. It's not some anonymous rando. I mean, they know who he is. And yet the mainstream media just is allergic. It's almost like they're afraid that if they actually put this together, it's going to be real. And if it's real, we're not exceptional anymore as a country. I
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And out of the story, again, I understand maybe the media of 2 minutes reporting on the fact that the whistleblower saw, Elon Musk, his operatives, hacking into the data, stealing. And this is something for Congress to deal with. And you have Democratic, Congress people who are looking and working with this whistleblower. So I understand not making that a story. But again, like you said, it's connecting these patterns, it's sending alarms. If you are a whistleblower in America, you should not have to have armed marshals come to your door when they know that only your teenager is home to threaten you not to go to testify before Congress. You should not have a drone flying over your head, snapping pictures of you walking your dog, and then that being taped onto your door telling you to stop what you're doing. This is the part, because Congress can deal, the Democratic, representatives, and if there are any Republicans who care about our data being stolen, and then, Russia hacking into,
yeah.
attempting to hack into this is something they can deal with. They can, look at the evidence, look at the log, look at what everything. That's not for media to discuss, but the tactics. I mean, this is America. Like, we should not fucking have a drone
Oh yeah.
flying over our head because we want to tell the truth. He didn't go to the media. He did it. He hired a lawyer and went through the proper whistleblower channels, which is what is directed when you sign up for the government. If you see something,
Say
these are
something.
the steps you
Of course.
take, and that's it. He didn't leak it to New York Times or Wall Street Journal. He went through the appropriate channels. And I mean, the fact that the media is not even questioning who authorized this drone, who, how, why, who, if there's a handful of people in the agency who know that he is a whistleblower and reporting this evidence, and I'm sure he didn't go and announce to his colleagues, hey, I'm going to be a whistleblower. Usually it's
Yeah.
only a handful of superiors who know to keep the whistleblower, safe and not in, to get the information to where it needs to go. Who gave his address? Who went into the system to find out where this guy lives? He said he lived in that apartment for only 2 months, and that the only place that had his address was the government system when he updated an HR. I mean, these are the questions not you and I on a fucking Substack live. Thank you for this live.
Yeah.
But these are the questions the media should be on,
With
live
the resources
asking.
they have, with the resources they have. I mean, the reality is that they, by the way, he's not alone. Let's be very clear. If it happened to one, it's happening to many. He just happened to be the one who came forward. If I'm a whistleblower and I see what's going on with him, which is that he's basically been ignored to some extent, that there's no movement to say, holy shit, what is going on right now? I'm not so sure that I come forward. Because why? Why? It's not like it's going to move the needle. It's not like Congress is suddenly convening hearings, right? I get that the Republicans are in charge of Congress, but my God, really? Because this could be a Democrat next time. Could be a Democratic president doing this to one of your whistleblowers. Like the the quest for power in service of zero ideals is so endemic to this party that they don't care if this. Listen, if this flips in 4 years, and God, I only hope that happens, and a Democratic president does this, I personally am going to commit to speaking up about it. But I'll tell you, the same Republicans who are keeping quiet now are going to convene thousands of hearings about it. Where is Chuck Schumer? Why are you not standing on the steps of the goddamn Capitol with this man next to you, at least putting your arm around him as a form of protection,
And
right? To
saying
say that he has a
we
Senate minority leader protecting him, that he's aware of this, that he knows it's happening, that he's protecting him. And to other whistleblowers, please contact us. This is what Chuck Schumer should be saying, and tell us we will protect you to the best of our ability by at least putting the light of publicity around your stories. By getting up on the floor, I mean, Cory Booker, do another 25-hour filibuster just on this. Bring attention to it.
and while you're at it, since you're in the, political world, maybe you can advise them not only with this, but just in general. They need to, Democrats, if at least Murkowski wants to join with them, they need to do daily national security
Of
briefings
course.
and alert people what is happening in plain language, not the bullshit, notes and whatever talk that they have amongst themselves. Plain language of what is happening to each person, what action means to every single person, and why it matters. Because again, I don't hear anyone carrying on about Head Start. I can tell you, as when my son, I got divorced at, when he was a toddler, it was extremely difficult raising a child. And even
Sure.
if you are married, to find daycare. And I mean, having these programs, preschool and then kindergarten, I mean, this is like
It's a lifeline.
say it is a lifeline,
Yeah.
and it makes you productive because instead of, you can easily go to work, your child has a place where they're being fed, where they're eating. I mean, I remember when preschool, he was allowed to join preschool, like it just kind of took like a building off of my shoulders because I knew, okay, I'm dropping him off at this preschool, and he will be there until 6 o'clock, and then I can pick him up, and that's it. And it
Yeah.
wasn't, scrambling to find. I mean, these programs are so important, and everyone has, grandchildren and children. And same thing with these tactics. I mean, you're right, where are they? This should be a daily press conference they have, basically like my tracker. I could
It's
forward them my
exact. I was about to
tracker.
say, why is it Olga Lautman who's writing the Trump tyranny tracker? I'm not even joking about this. Like, why is it you in New York writing this Trump tyranny tracker? Which, if anybody does not subscribe to that on Olga's Substack, I don't know what you're doing with your life because it is crucial. Truly, Olga, what you're doing, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on with you. I've said this to other people. Like what you're doing is a public service. It is the kind of public service that, frankly, the New York Times should be doing. It is certainly the kind of public service that the Democratic National Committee, where are you, DNC, should be doing. It is the kind of public service where leadership in both the House and the Senate should be doing. But they're
Well,
not. And I'll tell you how I
they're
know they're
happy to
not.
use my tracker and
No, no, no.
pick
I'll tell you.
the top 5, 10 stories and focus on it every day in a briefing.
And I'll tell you how they're not. Just we're a little off topic here, but
Yeah.
back when I used to work at Fox News many, 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 many years ago, when I mean, this is going back even probably before I got to Fox News, maybe when I was even when I was at CNBC, I think. So this is going back to like the first year of Obama, 2009. I somehow they have this talkers list the DNC had, right? And it's they kind of send these talking points out to people who are they're called talkers, people who are on TV, presuming that they're going to push the Democratic message. I never really read them. I never used them because I don't need somebody to give me talking points. I have my own brain. But nevertheless, it existed, and I think it still exists. I think I once in a while maybe still get it. I don't even know. I never open it. This should not be that. It should not be here are the talking points. It should be here are the facts, people of America, exactly as you put it. What's happening? Why is it happening? That's it. And you don't need 5 hours to set aside to read your tracker. It's designed on purpose for people. I feel like we're doing an ad for your tracker now, but I'm great with that because I think we should, because this is what the DNC and this is what Democratic leadership in the House and Senate should be doing, and nobody's doing it. I mean, God bless Cory Booker. He's a former client of mine. I know him and I love him. He did 25 hours, and then that was it. This should be an everyday thing. I'm not suggesting they shut the Senate down for 25 hours
No,
at a
every
clip
day they should come out to the steps of the Capitol
and do it.
and just say, here are the top 5 things
Yeah,
that Trump did to you, and this is how it would matter. Because sorry that we veered off into U.S. politics, but I mean, right now, FAFSA is crashing. I actually signed up for a master's program for the fall for
right.
cybersecurity.
Okay.
Um, and the school cannot calculate anything because right now the system is crashing. Because Trump's Department of Education cuts is throwing $1.6 trillion of loans, and the processing by each school, and fall. Everyone is registering for fall, up into the air. I mean, this is something everyone has someone who is going to college or has someone who is going to preschool or who's going to kindergarten or first grade and needs special needs programs. I mean, this is what they should be doing. So please, if there's any Democratic leaders out there, every day a whole group of them
Yeah.
should be coming out with a list of these are the things that happened today, and this is how it's going to affect you, whether you're in Iowa or whether you're in New York or whether you're in Florida. And that's it. And they should, one, they're collecting freaking, sending money, although I haven't received any, to collect donations. Same thing. Use these donations to say this is what's happening right now with a link to an article that people can read
Well,
about.
I will tell you, I get requests for donations to the DNC and to other Democratic entities all the time. I'm not giving a
Thank God.
dime
Yeah, I probably blocked
until
all that.
until they start showing me what they're doing with that money.
Yeah.
Because right now, I don't see that they're doing much. God bless Ken Martin, the new chair of the DNC. What are you doing, Mr. Chairman? Because I don't see any of it. All right, let's move on to
And then quickly, we'll cover the
yeah,
rest. So, Economist came out with a story yesterday, and this, it's honestly reprehensible. Not surprising. This is where we are. But basically, I mean, the article was scathing. I'll put it into the show notes of, what NATO sees it as. But the most insane part of the article, and again, very predictable, but it's just reprehensible, that the Pentagon pressured one of our allies, the economist didn't name which ally,
yeah.
to basically stop supplying weapons to Ukraine. So now it's not only that the United States is, up Russia's ass, and you can't even find Trump's toes. He's so far up Putin's ass and doing everything to try to force Ukraine to surrender. But now you have the United States and the Pentagon using their official positions to go to presumably a European ally, and tell them, to stop supplying weapons to Ukraine. So, I mean, this is one of the stories that really, I mean, this is something that I used to write about Orban.
Yeah.
Now I'm writing it about the United States. So this is I don't know. I actually have not looked to see if it was Czech or not. Um the Economist just said that they
An ally.
pressured, I
Yeah.
presume the ally didn't want to be made public. Um, they did quote Poland a lot, maybe. I don't know. But the bottom line is we are America. We used to defend democracy and democratic values. Now we are trying to force a sovereign country into surrender while trying to extort them of minerals in a gas pipeline. This is where we are. So I think, even for that, like Julie said, we need to be protesting because it's not only about us and what is happening here, it's about showing the world, that we do not believe this. And I can tell you, God bless the Ukrainians and the Georgians and, the Hungarians. We all know they have shitty dictatorships, not Ukraine. Well, Ukraine during Yanukovych, but Georgia and Hungary, we
Mm.
know that they have dangerous dictatorships. But there is nothing that makes people more proud than to see the hundreds of thousands of people gathered in a square, in whether it's in Georgia, whether it's in
Budapest.
Hungary,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's in Serbia these days, pushing back, because that shows that it's not the people. The people are not like this. And granted, half of the country voted. I promise you, half of this country is not for fascism. They voted for their own economic reasons and whatnot, but they're not for fascism. And this would send a powerful message to the world if we all did the same thing. So that's that. And then another thing, Russia carried out another terrorist attack on Palm Sunday, killing 35 Ukrainians, including children who were on the way to church. The scenes were horrific, and I mean, it hasn't stopped from there. Every night they've been bombing and killing people. But the G7 put out was putting together a statement of condemnation against Russia for what they called war crimes. Mm, And the US refused to sign up onto it. And basically, the statement didn't come out. And this goes back to exactly what Trump's people did in the UN a few months ago. We spoke about it, where they blocked the statement and voted with North Korea and and Russia. Um, and the first G7 statement a few months ago from another horrific attack. I mean, frankly, there's a horrific attack in Ukraine every day, but it just shows you, Trump is bringing the El Salvadoran, dictator thug who looks like a thug, acts like a thug, praising him and giving him this rolling out the red carpet in the White House. This is where the US, like, we need to make like a video showing the praise Bukele received while Zelensky was being thrown out, and what, where the US is aligning with now.
Yeah, I mean, my friend Joe Carducci on a show I did with her yesterday, JoJo from Jersey, if anybody knows her, said, but Kelly kind of walked into the Oval Office looking like, I think she said, a Staten Island club bouncer, whereas where
I'm from
you're
Staten Island, I
you're from
can
Staten Island, so
agree.
you could probably agree with her on that, right? And she's right. And meanwhile, Zelensky walks in wearing, the clothes he would wear if you were in the middle of a war, and he's castigated for not dressing the part. Meanwhile, this guy literally looks like he's Don Johnson circa 1980, 5, a Miami
You remember
Vice, except
Miami Vice, that
of
show?
course it was exactly the
With
same outfit except his was black, right? Don Johnson would have been much better with the neon, but like,
no, I'm talking about the criminals they were going
yeah, well,
after.
that's right. You look like a Miami Vice criminal. It's actually exactly who he looked like. For those of you who were around in the '80s to watch Miami Vice, but that's exactly what he looked like. And he's feted like some sort of hero, and Zelensky, who really is a hero, and is just I don't want to dwell on what happened to Zelensky because it upsets me so much. But this is part and parcel of the same thing, right? These are the people who would not allow the Security Council to condemn Russia on the anniversary of the Ukraine war. these are the people, I'm talking about our president and his
Else.
ancillary thugs, would not voted with North Korea and Iran and others against Ukraine and with Russia.
Iran actually abstained out of
Oh, I'm
all of
sorry.
this.
We're worse than Iran. I apologize. Belarus, sorry. Excuse me. Belarus and North Korea. What am I kidding? The Iranians apparently are
Iran
ahead of us
actually
on
is
this
like,
one.
well, this is a little bit too much. We're not
Yeah, even
getting
Iran was
involved.
like, this is a little too much for us. And now they're doing this in the G7. And of course, I think we can all predict that we will be pulled out of NATO. What do you give it? Do you give it till the end of the year, Olga? You think we're going to be out of NATO before that?
So the last story is
Yeah,
that the State Department um, decided to close 30 embassies and consulates because we're ceding power to Russia and China, so they can run in and fill in the vacuum, the void. Um, in every sector, whether it's economic or diplomatic or aid. Um, and with that, Trump also basically wants to cut funding for NATO headquarters, along with UN and other missions. So basically, we're not far away. Again, I don't know if Trump will actually pull out of NATO, and nor does he have to go through that fight. Maybe he'll want to start a fight like this, but it could happen one of two things. Either he invades a NATO country, which is could happen at any moment, because, for instance, with the Greenland, you know, Wall Street Journal reported that these, besides what's publicly being said, that they literally are sitting and putting together a plan. So
yeah,
either NATO ends because Trump, invades a NATO country, and then we're out of NATO, or he just basically is doing what he's doing now and strips it and pulls troops out and strips all funding, and that's it. So, I mean, he will collapse NATO, I believe, by the summer.
yeah. And that, of course, has been the
Not
line.
NATO itself. NATO can maybe form, a NATO minus United States, but he will collapse US participation in NATO by the end of the summer.
That has been the fervent goal, ambition, desire of every Russian dictator since Joseph Stalin. And who's accomplished it? Not Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump.
Yep.
So again, I go back to the fact of whether you think he's a Soviet asset or a Russian asset or not a Russian asset, it doesn't even matter except for posterity because he's doing everything he would be doing if he were on the exclusive payroll of the KGB or the
I mean,
successor agencies right
he's
now. It's
collapsing our economy.
He's
I
collapsing
mean,
our
we're
economy.
gonna
He's collapsing our standing in the world. He's collapsing our alliances. He's collapsing our military alliances. He is collapsing our social order. He is dividing the country. Like literally, who, there's no head of the KGB or its successor agencies that would be so hopeful as to have all of this happen in 90 days. It is not even 90 days yet. 3 months. That's all it takes. 3 months.
Yep.
And one last thing before we go, because I
Yes,
think it's
one
important.
last thing. I
Yes, go
just
ahead.
remembered. One last thing, and again, I suggest everyone read your article because you wrote a very good article on the North Sea.
Right.
The
About a
UK
month ago.
recently, and you can go through it quickly.
Yeah.
The UK recently announced, surprise, surprise, that they found Russian spy sensors uh, in the neighborhood. Russia continues obviously spying, sabotaging, cutting cables. I'll never forget. I mean, Russia is so insidious with their spying that my favorite story, probably to just show how insane they are, is a wonderful whale. Uh, was it a whale or yeah, whale? That somehow got lost and and ended up getting captured from St. Petersburg. It was actually a spy whale, outfitted with all the spy gear belonging to St. Petersburg like unit of military, and it basically was found off of Norway. The poor thing got caught, and that's it. I believe the poor whale passed away recently. I was keeping track on the whale, but that just shows you how Russia is, and while the rest of Europe just wants to be prosperous and grow their economies and their culture, and and live like normal countries.
Live their
Russia is
life.
in the
Yeah.
neighborhood trying to figure out where can we cause sabotage, terrorist attacks, what can we destroy, how do we turn this country against this country, and whatnot. So in the latest, it's the spy sensors, and you can go over quickly your story that you wrote about, when a Portuguese ship hit the U.S. ship carrying U.S. Oil for the military.
And captained by a Russian. That's the key
And
here. So
captain, yep.
the Portuguese ship was captained by a Russian, and half the crew was Russian. And that incident happened. It didn't get much coverage here. CBS is the only major outlet that did something on it. The rest did not. Pretty much ignored it for the most part. Um, the Times, I think, did a tiny blurb, and then the story kind of went away. But nevertheless, it happened. And it happened, I want to say maybe in February or March. I can't remember. We'll stick that story in the show notes also.
Hmm.
But I've been keeping an eye on the story and nobody's talking about it. And that happened within days of the UK escorting Russian submarines out of the same North Sea waters because they were doing whatever they were doing, reconnaissance. But understand, Russia's basically become, for those of you who, like me, love old James Bond movies, um, remember Spectre? Remember like Spectre that just existed to like create chaos for the sake of chaos, and they were kind of an extra national kind of evil organization who James Bond fought all the time. I think Ernst Blofeld was the head of it. I'm really digging deep into my Bond stuff. That's what Russia's become. It's basically creating chaos for the sake of creating chaos, strategically hoping to collapse the West. To what end? So they can say that they won the Cold War. To what end is that? Territorial expansion? Unfettered? Think about it. Like, okay, to what end? To what end? You're already the biggest country in the world.
To
And
the end that they can say, because I can say,
yeah, because
and
so they can
you.
say they did it.
Yeah, and you know the same thing that, while the West celebrated when the Soviet Union collapsed, I mean, the hardliners in Russia, including security services, said that, and again, they think long term. They don't have that instant
Yeah.
gratification, even if it takes them decades to achieve something. I mean, they basically started putting together a revenge plan, even though the West had nothing to do with the collapse. The collapse of the Soviet Union happened because one, Russia, stuck their nose in Afghanistan, which was a death trap for them, and the Soviets were losing so many soldiers that they just couldn't, handle the pressure at home. And two, their economy was crashing because this
Their economy
global.
started crashing in the 70s, even before
Yeah.
Afghanistan. Yeah.
So I mean, we had nothing to do with it, but they couldn't tell, their people, like, oh well, this has to do with us, and our communist ideology that failed you, and this is why our empire collapsed. So they needed to scapegoat it on the UK and the US, which had absolutely nothing to do with the collapse. I think the US was more surprised,
They
than.
were, because I spoke to somebody who was working at CIA headquarters when the Soviet Union collapsed, and they were more shocked than anybody that this was going on. They had no clue.
Yeah. So I mean,
So yeah.
and it's
So
just.
anyway, it is so good to see you. I love our Thursday mornings.
I know.
To everybody who has watched us, and we keep growing the show, so I'm so grateful to everybody who joined us on Tuesday night for our democracy spotlight, and looking at the parallels between authoritarianism in Russia and authoritarianism here in the United States, which is here. It's not that it's coming; it is here.
No, it's here. We're
Thank
here.
you for joining us then as well. We will send out, if you miss this, then you're not hearing this, but we will send out the whole show to those of you who came in halfway, and have stuck with us. We'll send out the whole show, both Olga and I, on our own Substacks with show notes, so you could reference the articles that we
Yeah.
alluded to. I am off to MSNBC, where I will not be talking about the whistleblower because I got my rundown and has nothing to do with that, which is a shame. And Have a great, for those of you who celebrate, great end of your Passover. Happy Holy Week. Blessed Good Friday. Happy Easter. Go to the protest on Saturday if you can. If you can't, figure out something else for you to do to
Talk to
keep
your
this.
family, the
Talk to your
non-political
family.
family.
Yeah, if your crazy uncle starts yelling at you, be nice to him, but maybe politely inform him that his 401k's collapsed and he won't
And
be able to
Social
send and his
Security
social security's
might gone.
collapsed, and maybe he won't be able to send his kids to college because those savings are evaporated. So, based on all of that, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you right back here next Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. To everybody around the world who's watching us, stay strong. We're with you.
Yes.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.